That's recording. All right, we're on. 3, 2, 1, and go. Hello and welcome to the EFM Health Club podcast. My name is Justin Waring. I'll be your host today. We are three guys who work in fitness, are in and around fitness, and are here to provide you with our knowledge and experience around getting your body in the best shape possible. With me is Wade Brady, all the way from the penthouse in Adelaide.
Morning. How are you, mate? Good.
Yeah, very well, Wade. If you're not watching on YouTube and you can't see, we have some really good backgrounds of penthouses. And Jason Heshusius, also in the penthouse suite.
Morning, Justin. How are you, buddy?
Excellent. Really, really well, and excited about today's episode. Today, we are focusing our attention on running. So when I started running, it probably wasn't as popular as it is right now. It's very hard to go anywhere, particularly in Sydney, anywhere in Australia, really, without running into a running group, no pun intended. So we thought we'd get some information out there around if you're thinking about starting running, where to start, what to do, is it good for you, is it bad? You hear lots of conflicting reports and I guess anecdotes about people getting injured, not getting injured, loving it, hating it. So we're going to try and cover it all as quickly as we can, but as in depth as we can. We could probably go over 2 episodes, I would think, but we'll see how we go. So let's start with the basics of running. Why do we do it? What's the benefit? Why should we do it? Wade, do you want to kick us off?
All righty. All right. So running is something that anyone, this is what I'm torn between. Anyone can do it, but I think with building up to it, it's cheap. You can do it anywhere. It's something the human body has been designed to do forever. Okay, so it's nothing new. You could start stretching it out and say you never know when it might save your life. Like, I suppose if you can't run, you probably don't miss as many buses.
What are you running from?
I don't know. I just think about if I lost the ability to run, I'd feel probably more vulnerable. I haven't really thought about all the reasons why. Justin, Jason, what would you add to that list?
It's 2 parts to me. It's the physiological part, and then it's how it makes me feel. I personally love running. I run. The personal reason is because I feel great. I get outdoors. I get out in nature, like in the setting of Justin's backdrop there, and amongst the trees and the grass.
Yeah.
You can run close to water. You can run the streets. You can get out to a forest, but it feels good. Physiologically, what are the benefits? Stronger heart, stronger lungs. We get better at taking oxygen in. Our bodies adapt and consume more oxygen, which means that's a good thing because your body's capacity for bringing oxygen in increases. Your body gets better at getting rid of carbon dioxide, which is obviously poisonous. We want to be able to get that out, so your lungs become better function. You get better circulation, stronger blood vessels, more durable muscles. Where do we go? There's definitely some hurdles, no pun intended, some roadblocks, etc. There is things that can go wrong on the injury side of running, but in short, better aerobic capacity. VO2 max is a measure of our body's ability to consume oxygen. A higher VO2 max is shown to have a direct correlation to health span and lifespan. So, I think those things are pretty important. I think part of the reason we exercise is to live longer, healthier lives, and with a strong heart and lungs, that carries us a long way, helps us to fight disease. the other part is, as I said, the enjoyment factor, the getting out in nature, the getting out of your four walls, getting some sunlight. There are social benefits as well to running, especially when obviously participating with other people and other groups.
Yeah.
That's,
And I think from a really basic level, when we're talking about why we would do it, and you see people in the gym walk into a gym, a 24-hour gym, and they'll go and walk on a treadmill to burn a few calories. Running's a great calorie burner. It's almost as high as it's going to get. So depending on the person, their weight, their age, and there's variable factors, but kind of anywhere between 10 to 14 calories a minute, depending on how hard you're going. To put that in perspective, everybody's favorite exercise, burpees, will generally be around 14 calories a minute. So whilst you're not getting up and down off the floor and hating life, doing burpees, running is almost up there. So, if you're looking purely for calorie burning, running is going to be as good as it's going to get for you. Now, when we talk about running, there's all these different distances that we might be able to do. And there are lots of different programs that will enable you to get started running. If you've never run before, this is where we're going to start from here, I think. You've never run before, you're sitting on the lounge, listening to this podcast going, yeah, all right, people seem to like it. And I see people running all the time. Where do I start? I know it's very simplistic, but let's start really, really, really small. It's as simple as running and walking and running and walking around the block, isn't it? Like that's where we've all started. That's where I started. I kind of got dragged into doing an event, and which I didn't really want to do because I wasn't a runner. And I thought, how am I going to do this? So I started very small, very slow kilometer run. Took me kind of 7-8 minutes because I would just took my time very, very simply and progress from there, little bit by little bit by little bit by little bit, until you kind of get to that point where you're going to do that event. So there are lots of programs. There's one couch to 5 kilometers. Have you guys heard of that before?
Yes.
That's a pretty common one. You can follow an online guide. And then park run is something that has boomed across Australia, I think in different parts of the world. Have you guys done a park run? I've never done one. Have you guys done one before?
Yes. Yeah. Done a few park runs, a few different locations. So yeah.
I've done a couple in 2 different locations, and something
I'm the odd person out. Must be a snob. I'm a running snob. I don't join people. So they're basically a 5 kilometer run, community based, free. Is that right?
Yes. No payment.
Yeah. So you turn up, you run 5 kilometers, you're running with other people. So there is that social element to it. So when I started running and started to up the kilometers, there are a few things that we need to bear in mind. So like any exercise, if you're going to continue to do something, you will need a basis of strength, particularly in the legs. Mm-hmm. And I experienced, and like everybody I think does that starts to run longer distances, things like a runner's knee is really, really common. Basically, as you start to up the kilometers with your running, you need to do a little bit of strength work around some of the fundamental muscles. Have you guys had knee pain? And that's one of the great fears people have about running, I think. People will tell me all the time, you shouldn't run, it's bad for your knees. Yeah. I say no, it's not bad for your knees if you do the right things. What do you guys say?
Can I share a story here? Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it.
So I ran a marathon in 2017. I ran the Melbourne Marathon, and prior to that, I'd just started at my club here at Mawson Lakes a little more than a year before that. I started running because I wanted to keep fit. I wasn't playing basketball anymore, and I wanted to get out of my four walls because I spent so many hours in the gym. The last thing I wanted to do was lift weights in the gym and use a cross trainer and a bike and a verticlimber. As much as it's a great facility, I wanted to get outside and get some sunshine. So I fell into the trap of only running, and I wasn't doing the strength training, and it was all going well. And I had a reasonable base level of fitness from playing basketball prior. During basketball, I had no knee problems, none at all. However, as the training progressed, I got to about 2 months out from the marathon. I started having, it was actually an issue with my calf, as well as a bit of stiffness in my right knee. And I went to the physio. I'm like, I've got a good load of training. I've built this up steadily. Where am I going wrong? He said, what are you doing strength-wise? I said, I'm not doing any strength work. I'm doing some sprints. I'm doing some intervals. Surely that's enough. And he said, no, you need to do some strength training to condition your muscles, but also condition your tendons to the load that you're doing, because while you're doing all this work, you're losing strength. If you aren't doing any strength training, you're only doing endurance. I'm like, Jason, you know this, you know better. You shouldn't be avoiding your strength training, you silly person. So I was really worried. At 8 weeks out, we'd just been to the 2017 conference in Melbourne. I got back and I had this injury issue, and I went to the physio. He gave me some exercises to do. Funnily enough, big movements, deadlifts, squats, one-legged squats, and some other more specific things. Lo and behold, my strength started improving. And despite having to scale back my kilometers, I was able to build them back up in time for the marathon. I ran the marathon and completed it despite having that injury. And I credit that to actually going and doing the strength training that I'd been missing for the 10 months prior. So that's the short version is, yes, strength training is essential. It's got to be in its correct dose, of course. You can't be doing it, obviously, 7 days a week, heavy strength training. You need some life in your legs for running. But if you try to do it without, you're more likely than not going to come up against an injury at some point. Injury is just a part of running. You may get niggles from time to time, but I would argue that if you are doing your strength training all over body, not just your legs, you are far less likely to get injuries. Your injuries will be less frequent, more in line with the frequency of injuries of someone who's doing their normal training. Rant over.
Oh, we've lost your volume there. We've lost your.
Yeah, how's that?
Good.
Got it.
I edit that. So my experience is exactly the same. I started to up my load. So my first ever fun run was the City to Surf here in Sydney, 14 kilometers, and I built myself up from 0 to 14. But halfway along that process, I start to get knee pain on the side of my knee. What the hell is this? I can't run anymore. So maybe everybody was right. And then just getting some simple advice, having not really ever believed in foam rolling prior to that, and understanding how valuable it is to foam roll, to strengthen your glutes, to strengthen your calf muscles, and generally to be strong down in the lower half. You're back exercising, training, running within 2 to 3 weeks, and off you go, and you go, okay, well, this has to be a priority. So I'd suggest that anyone who says running's really bad for your knees potentially started running and got sore knees and then just affirmed themselves and said, yep, no one should ever run. It's bad for your knees. I told everybody, and I got told I'm right. I'm never running again.
Where they got some good guidance, some good coaching and direction, and plowed on forward.
Yeah. And foam rolling has been an essential part of my running program ever since. So that was about 7 or 8 years ago as well. And I will, whenever I go for a run, and even on days off where I'm not going for a run, so I'll only go for a run 3 to 4 days a week, sometimes 2 to 3. And even because that's all I can fit in, but I will try and foam roll to make sure that particularly that muscle down the side of your leg, that runs from your hip into your knee, it gets specifically sore and
ITB.
specifically tight. The ITB, yeah. So if you were to Google ITB, I'm guessing only things about runner's knee and how important it is to massage that with a foam roller will come up. I've never tried to Google ITB, but that's what I'm hoping. Who knows what would happen if with Google. So we mentioned parkrun before. So you guys have both done it. My son has done it. People get pretty fired up about parkrun and how much they love it. Kind of starts to feel a bit culty to me. Explain why it's good, why people should try it, and why that should be maybe a starting point for people in their running journey.
You go, Wade.
I might hand this one over to you, mate.
Right.
I've done a couple.
Yep.
Well, quick, my story with running is I was sort of like the opposite of you guys. I ran at school, and I might still have the record at school for the 3K cross country. So it was a thing I was just naturally good at. So, and plus my phys ed teacher, the cross country coach, used to go and find me at lunchtime and make me train, which I hated at the time. But I thank him today because I know it was good for me. But when I was 22, I had a major blood clot in my leg, and running, it was the whole length of my leg. So ever since those days, I had to give up footy, going on blood thinning medication and stuff. My leg gets heavy when I run now, so it's not really that enjoyable. So while I've noticed a lot of people, just like on Facebook and stuff, people I used to go to school with, you guys probably as well, you've got a bit older and gotten into running. My story's probably gone the other way. I still run here and there, but the park runs I've done a couple of times. I've done the local one, and I did one down in Victor where my in-laws are. It's a good vibe. It's just like a mini competition, but not in competition. I really want to do it more, because even though I've got this thing with my leg, I know if I did it more often, I would be able to carry myself better. Like I still play basketball every week, and it goes okay. But the whys for why you would want to do parkrun, Jason, like what would you?
Yeah, absolutely. So running, I'll describe it like this: running on your own is quite obviously a solitary sport. It's a solitary endeavor. Some people don't necessarily enjoy exercising on their own. Parkrun, your local parkrun does have its own little community. There are people that go every week. They do recognize people for their milestone runs, their 50th run, their 100th run, their 250th run, a bit like what we do at EFM. There's a shout out each week for the newcomers. There's some general directions from the run director, the race director. It's a timed event. It's a free event. And it's just about encouraging people to get out and have a go. So more people are running now and exercising than what there would have been before, because there's somewhere to come and do it communally, where you're out on the course, people you don't even know, but there's a friendly nod and a smile and a hello, because there's something that connects you, that you're both there you're all there for the same purpose, and for all different purposes at the same time. So it's that 5K track, it's that start and finish that connects everyone that goes. It's generally tied in with the local community. So the one here in Mawson Lakes, it's right out the front of the cafes. People go for coffee afterwards. It's a social, interactive event, and so the connectedness brings people back, and the exercise is almost like a byproduct, if you know what I mean. The other thing about parkrun is it's 5Ks and is very achievable. So for a beginner to say, right, I'm going to run a half marathon, that's going from beginning to being able to run for, let's say, 2 hours. A 5K run, you might be talking either side of half an hour, maybe up to 40 minutes for those that are starting out. Maybe a little longer, up to low to mid 40s, but that's achievable for a much larger percentage of the population, and doesn't feel like such a mountain to climb. So it draws more people in. Some people stop at the 5Ks. Some people, that's their starting point, and 5Ks becomes a 10K, becomes a half marathon and beyond. So it's so many other running events.
So on the flip side of that, I think there'd be people listening that would think, yeah, but geez, 5Ks, that's still a bloody long way. And just talking to some people this week about running and their journey, I think there's some internal pressure that comes with, I don't know, for whatever reason, that I have to run the whole 5 kilometers. I put that pressure on myself when I did the City to Bay for 12 days without training, and it didn't go well. The ITB nearly snapped. I reckon it got that tight. But if you've got to be at peace with, I'll just do what I can. You run a bit.
Yes.
It's called, there's a name for that type of training. It's called fartlek training. Yeah. And you might just pick out a landmark, challenge yourself to get to that. And when I get there, I'm going to stop and walk. In this community that you would have at park run, I think trying to look at it from the perspective of someone new, you're afraid that someone might stop. They might see me walk. People will give you a pat on the back and say, keep going, well done. That is the total opposite of what these years are. Then if you consistently go to park run every Saturday, and I used to run to that tree and I'd be buggered, I'd have to stop and walk. And now I'm running past that tree. And I think once you start to see these little increments of improvement, then you start to believe, and I'm guilty of this too, with everything I've done in my life. I ran City to Bay, and all these people are running past me, usually younger crew. And I'm thinking, God, these guys are so fit. And then I'm like, the back of my head, I'm like, Wade, they've probably been training all year for this. You've just been playing basketball. So even myself, I'm finding it hard to remind myself, if I did this more often, it'd just get easier and easier. And that gradient of getting easier, I don't even know where it stops. I'm sure it starts to taper off at some point, maybe at marathon, maybe at ultra marathon. But it's just that I think like an EFM or like a group training, people are scared of starting because I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. Everyone else knows how to do it. I think it's the same sort of thing. Like everyone else is going to be running from the start to the finish line in one go. I can't possibly do that, but it's fine. It can be you can walk 90% of it the first time you do it. You could walk the whole lot.
Yeah, absolutely. You've touched on a few really important things there, Wade. The fear of perceived failure. Fear, by the way, stands for false evidence appearing real, because it's a worst case scenario that you're worrying about. You get out to a place like parkrun, the risk of turning this into a parkrun ad. It is a supportive community. They do pat you on the back. It's good job, well done, keep going. It's so positive. So that's one part. And the second part is you're right. You don't have to run the whole way. There is no shame in that. In fact, if you're trying to push through all the time, you are more likely to come about trouble in the long run if you're not running within yourself. So running shouldn't be painful all the time. It shouldn't be just a struggle and a slog the whole way. When it starts to feel like that, you should either slow down or walk until your conditioning catches up, and you can.
Yeah,
it's timed. The event's timed, so you're measuring what you're doing. This week I was 35.5 minutes. I'm going to go a little faster this week. And so you stretch yourself a little bit. The next week you go 34.5 minutes. Then you go on 34 minutes and 10. And each week that time starts to come down. It does level off, obviously, at some point, but it gives a measuring point in a positive and motivating environment.
Yeah. And the other thing is too, everybody feels like someone's looking at them too. You go out running, people are looking at me. No one cares.
They're
people
only
are there
worried
to
about
encourage you.
themselves. Everyone's worried about themselves. They're doing the same thing.
And they'll tell you how quickly they did it and if they improved. Or everyone loves their own story. No one else cares. It's like playing golf. No one cares what you shot. No one cares how many good shots you hit. No one cares except yourself. Even your wife, husband, partner, whatever. No one cares. I don't want to hear your story. But it gives you a good measuring stick to go along. No one's looking at you. So concentrate on yourself. Do what you can, and you will find that being kind of in your own little bubble within a group is a really nice thing, because you've got the group almost as camouflage. And the other thing is, and I'll relate this back to golf. I took my son to golf yesterday, and he saw guys hitting it along the ground all over the place, and he's only just beginning. He goes, God, I didn't realize how bad everybody was. Everyone's terrible at golf. They're awful. No one's really that good at running. There's a very small percentage, and the rest are just trying to get through. So aim for that tree, that telegraph pole, that light, and run to there. And then if you're feeling good, go a little bit further and go a little bit further. Generally, we walk at about 1 kilometer every 10 minutes. So worst case scenario, you jog for the first 30 seconds and have to walk the other 5 kilometers. You're going to be out walking for 15 minutes. You could probably do that anyway. And if you just get little bits of running in between, then suddenly the time comes down.
Fartlek training, it's also when you start running again. So it's like I might run to the telegraph pole, or here in South Australia, the Stobie pole. And then when I get there, I'm going to walk. And then you got to do little challenges with yourself. And it's like, all right, enough walking. When I get to that next thing, I'm going to start running again. And it becomes a little game, and it stimulates your mind. And as I said, if you then go back and do that same run, the exact same run again the next week, with maybe another run in between to help progress a bit quicker, you can start, as you said, I went a bit further this time. And then once you've started to get that belief. And the other thing too is just, I didn't really jump in before, but when you're talking about the sore knees and stuff, running is bad for your knees if you're not conditioned for it. Like when you're young at school, you're primed, you're ready to go. You are built to move. Like you don't need to do strength training. You run around at school all day, fall off equipment in the yard, and you'll be fine. A lot of people stop moving once they're out of school. A lot don't even do sport. But if you're sitting in a chair for most of your day and you're starting to get into your middle years, you've lost so much condition. And then to go out and run, that is going to be bad for your knees. It's going to be bad for your back. It's going to be bad for your hips. It's going to be bad for everything. So if someone says, is that bad for something? It's like, well, tell us more about the story. Like, what do you mean bad? Like, it could be, as we sort of said before, like it could be you haven't got the right shoes, or you haven't been rolling your ITB, or there's a muscle imbalance. That's another one. The glutes. One of my members that does heaps of running, she's always had back pain, and she's finally found a physio. Wrap the band around just above the knees when you get down into that like squat position. And we probably know the crab walk where you go sideways. She there's a simple one. He got the physio, said, before you go for a run, get down in that position, that like squat position with the band around the knees, and go backwards, just little shuffles the whole length of your hallway. That'll get your glutes, the glute med firing. She went for a run. Her back was fine for the first time in ages. And it's just, you just got to get the right help a lot of the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. While we're talking about this, for anyone listening right now, go back and listen to last week's episode about core, because that definitely relates to what we're talking about today with the running. Strong core makes for stronger runners. So it's not just the legs, it's the core, and to a lesser extent the upper body as well. But go back and listen to that episode.
Yeah, I can tell you when, so I did a marathon, not last year. I missed this year's. Last year's, my legs were fine. My feet were fine. My ab muscles and generally my midsection was the sorest of anything, because I braced for, 4 hours or so. When I do long runs, it's nothing really hurts other than particularly my abdominal muscles. So, good core strength. Obviously, mine's a little weak for that length of time. Good core strength is fundamental, and you will develop core strength as a result of running too. Like the two will work together. Now, we touched on getting the right shoes, and there's other little bits and pieces. We might have to do an equipment review at some point. And the thing I was going to mention too, we've talked about parkrun a lot. If you feel as though running around the streets or through a park is a little bit boring, you can also do trail running. So if you're anywhere near a mountain, so I live in the Blue Mountains, there are lots of social trail running groups. They'll run anywhere from 3 or 4 kilometers up to the really long ultra trails, 50s and 60s, and they'll go out and train together. And the group and the community keeps coming together. So they'll post, I'm going to go for a run. Does anyone want to come? And you just show up, and that's when you run. So it's a simple Google search to find the nearest group of like-minded individuals that, if you're a little worried, particularly running through trails through the mountains, about where to go and how to do it, everyone's very happy. As much as people don't care, they're very happy to share their experiences and help you along the way and give you the advice from experiences that they've had, that they've learned from, so you won't fall into the same pitfalls. There's so many of these groups now that, you know, it's probably harder not to find them than to find them now.
It's funny. It's funny how positive it is, though. Like, if you start looking through other sporting groups, like I know some sports, maybe netball, there's sometimes I've heard there's quite a lot of politics involved sometimes, like, or in footy growing up, like, you don't make the team and there's a bit of angst, but like, it can get messy and pretty horrible. But there's just something really positive just thinking about it of a running group. Like, I can't really think of any negative situations where if you can't come up, like, someone might stop and run with you, or they'll say, keep going. It's not like, oh, Jason, what is wrong with that guy? He's not keeping up today. Like, that just doesn't come into the thinking at all. And you've done a lot more running group stuff than me. Like, it's all positive, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it must be something about the endorphins you get from exercise, I suppose. So,
that'd help as well. Like, I noticed after City to Bay, all a bunch of crew that don't know each other were on the just public transport on a bus heading back into the city, and the vibe in that bus was unbelievably positive and electric. And I just been soaking it in, thinking, this is so cool. This is so cool. Yeah.
The mental health benefits are huge. Go ahead.
Yeah, we haven't discussed that a lot. We might save that for another podcast, like the benefits of this. And endurance running really, when I talk about endurance, whatever feels really long to you. So for some people, 5 kilometers seems like the end of the other side of the earth. For some people, it's 10. And then when people get to 10, they go, well, actually 10's making me a bit bored. I might push to 20 now. There's these little progressions. And the City to Bay, the vibe is probably amazing. I always say the City to Surf in Sydney is the only day where people in Sydney are nice to each other. So there's 80, 90,000 people doing it on a yearly basis, and the streets are lined with people handing out, you know, even down as you get into Bondi, lollies and chips, just encouraging each other. It's a fantastic environment to be around. And then come Monday, everyone hates each other in Sydney again. No one will let you in traffic, and so on and so on. And so if we kind of go, all right, we've started with our park run, and we're progressing, and we've got to a point where we do run that 5 kilometers. The runner's high is something that I've only experienced a few times. People talk about it as something that will really spur them on. Have you guys had that real high from just finishing the run and getting to the end?
Every time.
Every time.
So thank God that's over. Mainly
that's release, mate. That's different.
Mainly because I haven't prepared properly, but I don't know if I've ever experienced because like I was a middle distance runner at school. I was like 3K, 5K. Furthest I ever ran was the other couple of months ago for the City to Bay, 12K. And I've spoken to people that say you get the runner's high within a marathon at like the 10K mark and I'm just like, wow, I've never been there before. Have you, Jason?
Yes, yeah. So I've trained and done a few long distance events, and it takes building up the endurance to be able to enjoy it, I guess. So you get to the stage where you're running and you can run where you're not up at your threshold. You can run long distance at a lower max heart rate, a lower heart rate, I should say, as a percentage of your maximum. So what I found when I started clocking up the kilometers and doing big weeks and big months, you'd put back-to-back runs together. You do a run on Monday and a run on Tuesday. The first 30 minutes of the run on Tuesday, my legs might be really heavy. But then about 30 minutes in, everything starts to free up and open up. The stiffness starts to go away. So any stiffness I had from the day before, all of a sudden my legs feel better. And then after an hour, the hour to 2 hour mark, just once you've got the conditioning and the base of fitness, the second hour feels easier than the first. And that seems really silly. So if you're listening for the first time and you're thinking, I don't run, what's this second hour you speak of? I'm that's the first 10 minutes. In relation to the question, that runner's high comes for people when they have put in, I guess, the training to get to the stage where they can train for longer than an hour, I would say. And because you're training at a lower threshold, you're running at a state where you can sustain it. It's sustainable. You're not under the pump. You're not straining to run. You're just running with ease. It'll be like a hiker who's going for a long walk. They really enjoy the long walk. It's peaceful because they're walking at a level or an intensity that they could hold for a long period of time. Do I get runner's high if I'm trying to race 12 kilometers at the City to Bay? No, that hurts because you're racing. But if you back that intensity off and you're going at a speed that you can sustain, then yeah, after 30, 45 an hour, yes, I have experienced that, and it does. It feels great, but it does take some training to get there.
Yeah, it's quite abstract. Like, it's even abstract for me who's done a bit of running. It's like, I think I've thought about that with getting fit and strong in the gym too. I think when you're starting out and you've never had it before, it's such an abstract thing. It sounds good. I imagine it's good, but when you get there must be nothing like it.
Yeah, I think it may have something to do with just an internal satisfaction that you've trained to this point, and you're almost incredibly impressed with what you're capable of, and when you finish what you just achieved, because in the back of your mind there would be some thought that I might not get there, or this is going to hurt me too much and I'm probably not ready, and all of the doubts tend to melt away if you've done a good level of training and followed a reasonable program. That satisfaction that you feel is unlike anything else you kind of get in other facets of life. So the last thing I wanted to finish on, so we're talking about, starting at a couple of kilometers, joining a little running group, whatever that might look like, even getting to the end of your 5 kilometers, and then targeting other things beyond that 5 kilometers. So I say to people who started running and then do an event, might run a 10K event, and then they go, I don't think I'll be able to run 20. That's beyond me. I don't know. To me, and the advice I've always given, and it seems to hold true, is if you can run 10 kilometers, you can run 20, because both of them are just a number. And the only thing that really is holding you back from running 20 kilometers after you've just done a 10 is what's in your head. Your mindset will dictate how far you can go. And once you've run 20 kilometers, running 40, running a marathon at 42, that's just a number as well. It really depends on how far you're willing to commit, I guess, to your training. If it is something that you want to do, I suggest you have a plan and have trepidation and thinking, yes, running a marathon or running 20 kilometers, whatever might look like the end of the earth to you, go ahead and do it. Because looking back, I feel like looking back on your life going, God, geez, and watching the runner in the Olympics come over and get the Olympic gold medal and go and thinking, I would have really loved to run a marathon one day, but yeah, now I can't possibly do it. I'm too old or whatever. If you want to go and do it now, because the only thing really stopping you is what's between your ears.
Can I add to that, Justin? you are dead right. If you can run 10, you can run 20. If you can run 20, you can run 40. There's a process that has to go in place for that to happen, of course. You add a little bit each week. That's part of the training principle. But to back that up, I'd say it's harder to get to 10 kilometers than it is to get from 10 to 20, because the difference is only 50%, right? And you're already in this great habit that's got you to 10 kilometers. All you've got to do is add a little bit to your long run and build the endurance. You've got the motion down pat, you've got the strength. It's just a matter of making sure you don't bite off so much more that you can chew all in one hit. But each week you add a little more, and you can get there 100%. And you mentioned age. I'll share this. I trained my mum 3 years ago at 65 to run her first marathon. Mum's an ex-smoker. She had an aneurysm at 48. She was not a healthy specimen until she started exercising probably 11, 12 years ago. She now trains regularly. She set her mind to doing a 5K and then a city to bay. She did a half marathon. Then one day she came and said, Jason, I want to do a marathon. Can you train me? I said, yeah, let's give it a go. She says, well, I don't know if I can do it. I said, well, it's simple. You just do this, this, and this. And she did every single step, including the strength training. And lo and behold, she followed the processes. She followed the instructions, and she made it. She ran a marathon. So,
yeah.
I just wanted to echo what you're saying. Yes, you can. There is a process to follow, the steps to take, but yes, you can do it is the answer. Don't tell me you can't, because I won't have it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, that's, yeah, let's finish there, because that's amazing. Like, I think between us, we know some older people, men and ladies in their 60s and 70s that have run a marathon without having done. I just said goodbye and good luck to a lady who's going to run the Chicago Marathon in a week's time, and she's into her mid 60s. So there's enough inspiration around us and people who are doing the things that we could all do if we just stop and think. I'd like to revisit the running topic again in a few weeks if we can, boys, because there are other things that I feel like we need to cover. So equipment, things like what socks to buy, what shoes to buy, so that you don't get blisters, and the process around that. Also, is running for everybody, for every body shape? We kind of touched on it, but I really think people will go, well, yeah, all right, that all sounds great, but you guys are already fit. I'm a little bit overweight, and I think my knees are already sore. I shouldn't do it. So I'm not going to listen anymore to this, because it doesn't, this doesn't account for me. So I'd like to revisit that amongst some other things, if you don't mind, maybe in a couple of weeks' time.
That's a great idea.
All right. And if you do think, if you're sitting there listening and you do think none of this applies to you because you're not going to be a runner, you'd maybe like to be, but you're not quite sure to get started, please put a comment or a note or a question down below in whatever podcast player you're listening to this in, and we will get in touch and give you some advice on how to get started, what to do, and maybe to overcome some of the obstacles, because and that's the other thing, there are some really common thoughts in terms of what's an obstacle to go out and run, and we can kind of squash them all for you.
Even small amounts, Justin. Even small amounts of running are good for you. Doesn't have to be 5Ks, even doesn't have to be a kilometer. Small amounts, short bursts. There are many benefits to running apart from the endurance side that we've touched on today.
Yeah, fantastic.
There was one obvious thing too, I'll just quickly say, is park run might be a good place to start with the fartlek style stop-start, but ask a friend. I'm sure if you just found a friend that does a bit of running, they're not going to say no, as we've already covered. So a friend within a group could be a really good place to start as well.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, thanks a lot, boys, for today. If you've liked the content today, even if you haven't, please review, please leave a comment, subscribe, all of those things across your podcast players. That is the EFM Health Club podcast for this week. We'll catch you soon.
Cheerio.
See ya.
And